There you go. Woo! Welcome back to another episode of What Are You? How's everybody?
Hey.
Doing well, doing well. We have our wonderful guest, Suyan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Suyan Moreno, and I'm a graduate student under the Humanities Department at CU, and I'm also the Interim Director for Latinx Student Services at the Center for Identity and Inclusion. Whoop, whoop.
Woo! We're about to change that interim to permanent.
Make it happen, yo.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to check in with everybody. Aja, how are you doing?
Your girl is tired. She is very tired. The dark circles are on full display this morning. Concealer just said, I'm dipping. But other than that, I'm sure you can hear my voice is a little bit different than how it usually sounds.
Very sultry.
Oh, very sultry, very chain smoker. Oh, hello. Stop smoking, kids. So I'm a little under the weather.
Don't smoke, kids.
Don't smoke. What? You do you. Live your life. Don't hurt anybody. But little under the weather. Other than that, I'm okay. Professors are still working me to the bone, so nothing has changed. I have about 6 hours of homework to do tonight. 6 to 7 hours of homework to do tonight. So it's going to be a late one. Might need to see if I can slip a coffee trip in there or something. Yeah, that's me. Suyan, how are you? How are you doing?
I felt every word you said in my soul because I am also tired. I'm working on my defense for this week for my thesis. Yay! But also
You got this. You got this. Positive thoughts only.
Thank you. But you know, it's time. It's time for change to happen. It's time for growth to happen. And I'm so glad that I can be the part of the CU community and also help create that change within our community.
So wholesome. I'm over here like, I hate school. This
Yeah.
is so middle. And Suyan's like, I'm so glad that I could help with this change. And I'm like, ugh, how wholesome of you. Ugh, activity. Ugh.
Or yeah,
It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, and it's just being able to hang out with, you know, students like yourself and be able to not only give you the knowledge that I might have accumulated throughout the years, but also give you that support and say, hey, we're in this together. That's where I take my joy in. So thank you for checking in with me. Mental breakdown imminent.
Love you though. Ray, how you doing?
You know what? I'm doing all right. We're closing in on that spring break. I'm contacting my mama. She gets to see me next week, so I'm very, very excited. I get to take her to all the places that we haven't. And just like, I think like that's my main motivation for this week. Just like get through it so you can get to spring break. That's it. Like we're not going to no Panama Beach or Florida or, you know, anything. I'm literally just going back to Southern Virginia to just hang out with some folks, like give my mom a hug, you know, just do simple things. Like it's not a big thing, but like when you don't see your family for a year, it does like impact you to the point where you're like, oh man, like this, I didn't think I was gonna miss this hug as much.
And that food though.
Oh gosh, that's it. Well, like at least like I know where to go, like what spots to hit up immediately that I can call and be like, hey, are you guys open? I know you guys are closing, but it's like, it's me.
Do you have takeout?
Yeah. Or like half the people who my mom raised and or like helped out, they're running their own restaurants. And so like, I just tell them my mom's name and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were coming back. And I was like, yeah, I'm just here for a little bit. And so they're like, we'll fix you a plate, like just come in the back, da, 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 da. And so it's very like
That's so
homebody. Yeah, no, it's very neighborhood-esque and I'm very excited for it.
community there.
That really reiterates the importance of community even more in times like this. Like we really can't survive without all on our own. It's so important to build that community and connect to that community, because that's how we make change happen, and that's how we grow, and that's how we feel that love and support.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is like a good tie-in for everything that's going on this week when it comes to just building that community. Because I know, like, shout out to the Virginia community that's kind of hurting right now, the Black veteran community, Minnesota's community with everything that's going on doubly for them, and then Tennessee community. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, this is why I probably should stay away from cable, because yesterday it was a bunch of news stories that kind of like popped into like a span of a minute. It kind of overwhelmed me, where it was like not only talking about like the Derek Chauvin murder case, and that's going on. We're wrapping that up, so that's good. There was another incident of, you guessed it, police brutality when it comes to Dante Wright, and the protests that are starting because of that. Along with that, there was another breaking story of Lieutenant Nazario, who was a lieutenant in Virginia, who got pulled over, pepper sprayed without even 3 times, which like they showed
the car.
So yes, like the Monday breaking news was that they showed like the footage that he had where he kept his composure even though getting pepper sprayed multiple times. His dog got pepper sprayed. He, heard a lot of things from the police saying like, oh, you should be scared, this and that and the third. And obviously it's the same story, different person, where it's like the police said that the suspect was being vicious, threatening, this and that, and then the footage showed something completely else, right?
Yeah.
So we have all these 3 stories, and then on top of that, we had another school shooting in East Austin, Tennessee, where another school police officer, I think it was either a school police officer or like just a police officer in general, they had got fatally shot, along with several others who've gotten injured. So that's a lot of a sandwich when it comes to talking about police brutality, gun reform, like, racism, like this and that. It was a lot to take in for one solid minute of like breaking news. So yeah, go ahead.
Watch Republicans be like, oh, now is not the time to talk about gun reform. Let's heal. Let's mourn.
Well, at this point, it's like
actively re-traumatizing everyone.
Well, it's like at that point when you stack those things all together, what can you not talk about? It's like, okay, if you don't want to talk about gun reform, let's talk about police brutality. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Let's talk about Derek Chauvin's case. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Let's talk about, let's talk about gun. Like, we have to talk about one of these things.
Yeah.
If they had come in like weeks on weeks on weeks, like, okay, let's talk about it. But man, it was having all those stories like stacked on together. I couldn't even comprehend how things were happening. And also, like, with the Brooklyn Center protest, they had more police officers there than we had at the Capitol. So I was like, oh, what a surprise. It's just like,
wow, I'm so surprised. That's so crazy.
It's like, how y'all gonna protect a police station more than the actual capital of our country? Like, that's a big ask.
Priorities, right?
Yeah.
Are we white people? No. Let's be militant as hell.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think
something. Like,
I think that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to like how overwhelmed all that is, and like just like doing the same things that we've been doing for a while is frustrating, and it's a lot. And
we have to keep going with our lives, right? It has stopped. We have all of this stuff we're dealing with, and still got to go to work, still got to go to school, still got to pay the bills.
Well, one of the things I always hear, and I'm in a globalization class with an interesting group of people. So there's a lot of exchange that happens in the Zoom chat and just in class in general. And one of the things said in the chat yesterday was like, I'm seeing all this anti-Asian hate, and you know, all these people came out for Black Lives Matter, so like why can't these other communities come out for us too? And it's like, yes, there should be solidarity, but let's address the anti-Blackness within your community before you ask the Black community to come and do something for you. Like, of course, we can empathize and understand some of the struggles and the anti whatever identity violence that's been going on. But it's not fair, it's not realistic, and it's, in my opinion, BS to say that the Black community should be champions of everything.
I would challenge that by saying instead of but with and. Like I do know the, I guess, frustrations when it comes to like those kind of arguments, and it kind of comes to and fro where it's like white supremacy is pushing these agendas of saying like, oh well, like the Asian community isn't for Black people, or the Black people aren't for the Asian community, when it has been and always will be like white supremacists and like just white identifying individuals who are saying these things, not like necessarily like our communities. And so if we start flipping it like, oh, like the Black community can't be like saviors for everybody, it's like we're not saying that they should be saviors for everybody. We should just say we will be supportive of you no matter what, 100%, because at the end of the day, it's not the Asian community saying this, it's white people who are saying it to Black people, like whispering it and just being like, oh well, the Asian community wasn't there for you anyway, blah 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 blah. And there's going to be one person that's going to be like, you're right, and just go with it. And so this is where like we kind of have that kind of like nonsense argument where it's like, no, like Black community should be there for the Asian community and vice versa. It's only when we get to this part where it's like, oh, like we see what's clear as day when it comes to Dante Wright, where it's like, this is a police officer who took their power, abused it, accidentally shot their pistol with, their taser, and then did that. And so it's not so much of like getting to the arguments of like, oh, now who should help who and blah, 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 blah. It's just like, no, we should just, this is a continuing thing with all marginalized communities, 100%.
Yeah.
And
I've seen a lot of talk online about people being like, well, where is the Black community now? Where is the Asian community now? Where is XYZ community now? And it's coming from other minority people. I see it coming from a lot of minority people who are outside of these communities, and also a lot of white people. But I think there's a general frustration there because there is so much anti-Blackness rooted in a lot of these minoritized identities that hasn't been fully addressed and fully acknowledged. Because once you acknowledge something as a problem, then you can start working to solve it. But I see a lack of acknowledgement and a lack of participation too. So I can see both sides of the coin where it's like, yes, of course that exchange has been there. It's always going to be there. But there's also some frustration there with the lack of acknowledgement and sometimes lack of solidarity there.
Yeah. And like, I just got to flip it because every time I hear but, I'm just like, that's putting like, not like an excuse, but that's kind of like pushing out like, no, we've done this as a Black community. And I'm like, no, not really. Like there's still issues that we have to like confront and we have to own up to just as much as the Asian community has to own up to. So like, yes, there are frustrations, and at the same time, there are, issues that we still have to own up to when it comes to like combining communities and all this trauma and stuff like that. I'm just saying, like when I hear but, I'm just like, like let's not use but, like just, you got to add and, because that's where it starts getting like, oh, like the Black community has done so much, but we can't really help the Asian community right now. Or it's like the Black community has done so much and we will continue to help the Asian community. Even though we're hurting right now, we're all hurting together. We're helping each other out. Like I always like the language when it comes to like but and, because when I start to hear it, I'm like, why did you say but though? Like, and that's, I'll always,
Ray said improv class. Yes, and. Yes, and.
Yes, and it's definitely, and it's like, it's that language thing. Definitely, like, I want to let everyone know who's listening and stuff like that, that we are inclusive. And so, like, during these times when it comes to like school shootings or police brutality and like just overall prejudice, like, we're standing with everybody. Like, you know, everyone is going through so much going on in the country right now when it comes to Asian hate, when it comes to police brutality, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, 1,000 things. And we will continue to kind of have that space to create, you know, equality for all marginalized communities to fight against white supremacy, which is a great segue for CN.
That's one of my favorite quotes by Audre Lorde. I'm not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own. I think it's very important to acknowledge that even though we do have those differences, we're all in the same fight together. We have to coalesce. We have to get together and make it happen, because all of this siloing sometimes is working with the same privilege and capitalist mindsets that have been implemented within our societies, and we're replicating them sometimes within our communities. So I think, you know, in my opinion, coalition, that's how we're going to help create that change. We have to be intersectional. We have to be community oriented, and we have to understand that their struggles, y'all's struggles, is my same struggle as well. Because I have to go ahead and not vouch for y'all, but I have to go ahead and do what I can to help break this. Because we have come to a point where we have to create that change from the inside out.
But so, Yan, how do we do this? I'm tired. Like, your boy is tired. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen so many, and it almost feels like deja vu, because it's like we've done this before multiple times, where we've rallied together, where we've like seen like news on news of like old ladies getting like messed up, jumped on, you know, Asian women getting like fetishized and hated on and murdered. You know, young Black men getting murdered in the streets by police officers, those who are supposed to like protect and start. You know, I've seen this so many times. It's just like, I don't know what to do. I'm exhausted.
It's coming on from us from all angles. And while we cannot fix everything, while we cannot address every single thing that's going on in the world, I think that what we can do is be able to take care of ourselves first through self-care practices, through mental health practices, and make sure that we're at our center so we can better fight. So we can better keep doing this work. Because yes, it is exhausting. Yes, it is tiring, but it all starts with us. We have to take care of our core before we take on these fights.
True. And, you know, definitely to those who are Caucasian descent, definitely.
That's all I can say about that.
What were you saying?
Accountability.
Accountability. Yeah, no, definitely. If you see your friend who is not of white descent, check on them. Like, definitely, like, check on them, see what support they need, see how they're handling these events. Because it's weird, and it's like hard for everyone in their own case to talk about these things. It's overwhelming, to say the least, you know, and I think it's hard to have someone go through these kind of events and then look to your friend who, you know, doesn't look like you, and then just kind of be like, damn, that's wild. Even though, like, that's the generation we're living in, where it's like we've gone through so much trial and, you know, trauma that it's kind of gotten numb, to say the least, honestly, from, you know, the Gen Z perspective. I think we're all in the, I don't know, they're all in the pattern of just being like, seeing like a traumatic event and being like,
well, that happened.
you know, like, yeah, just doing.
You're just doing the woe to tragedy.
Pretty much. And it's hard, dude, because it's like we don't have time. Like, what is it? 2-3 weeks ago, we had to think about like everything that happened in Boulder. fast forward if I were to go back in time 3 weeks and just been like, we ain't seen nothing, and then go to today where we had a school shooting, we had 2 cases of police brutality, and then we have a murder case of police brutality that caused someone to die. You know, like it's just like, what is going on?
In the middle of a global pandemic.
In the middle of a global pandemic, where Johnson & Johnson halted their vaccine because it was causing blood clots. Bro, it's like, it's all those things wrapped into one where, you know, after a while, I can see people like becoming numb and just not wanting to talk about things and like not wanting to recover, because it's like it's like you get beat after beat after beat down. You know, like where can people go when they want to get this kind of where they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to, you know, equality.
Especially, like, I know that I harp on my Black identity a lot, but especially with the fact that there has been no major institutional process or effort put forward to address the crimes against humanity that occurred, that founded the United States, right? All we got was an apology because Obama was president. I was gonna come in and be like, oh yeah, like, we're sorry. All right, Black president, here you go. Like,
here's the fix-all. No more racism in America.
Exactly. Like, there has been no major institutional effort to address anything. There has been no effort to financially compensate, to mentally heal, to address the crimes against humanity. And once again, like, that lack of admission, like, I wake up every day and I think about it. That lack of action, that lack of acknowledgement, just the lack of humanity in addressing that issue.
And most importantly, the lack of humanity that comes with these empty words, with these empty statements. I mean, we don't have to go too far with those empty statements. We've seen them within our university as well. It's like, what is our university doing to create that change? How are we creating this inclusionary, equitable community for our students? How are we welcoming our students of color into our campus and making them feel like they matter and that their academics matter and that their completion of the program matters?
How are we addressing the tenure of BIPOC faculty? How are we retaining BIPOC faculty? How are we addressing the identities that are underserved at our institution, especially Middle Eastern North African? Especially. No support services set up whatsoever. People are like, oh, they can go to the study abroad office. Like, study abroad? It's not a support service. What? Excuse me?
And it brings us to another question, and it's a hard realization to do, even more so in the role that I am. Where are our support services for our students?
Yeah.
If we want to be real about these conversations, we have to have that accountability within our own communities, within ourselves, and the places in which we move and work in.
And if they are existing, how are they functioning? Who's leading them? Who is not leading them? Mm-hmm. How is that burden being placed on the students?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that these are really heavy questions that we don't have the answers to. I'm just students, I'm just interim. What change can I possibly or we possibly do? But at the same time, I think that by bringing these conversations to the table, by putting ourselves in the table, that's how we help create that change. Because no accountability is going to happen unless we make noise about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very heavy burden for us to carry as students of color, as a Latinx student, as a Black student. It's very heavy. It's the emotional labor that we shouldn't have to have, but unfortunately, it's what we're stuck with.
Yeah.
But not for long, hopefully.
And this is where you kind of like have your like supportive systems and like supportive networks where you can just be like, all right, you know what? Let's go talk to Chancellor Mark, you know, and you start like finding who you need to talk to and figuring out like how to set up emails and stuff like that. And it's hard because like, you know, if I were to tell you like, all you need to do is just set up an email or like go to study abroad, like you've seen the faces. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like this seems fruitless anyway.
Mhm.
And whatever action you do to kind of like start the stepping stone for this action, that's probably like the best thing you can do when it comes to creating that change or creating that support for one another. I think, you know, the Black Student Alliance is a great organization that we have here at CU Denver, where we have been like group chatting it up when we are frustrated and we're like, what should I do in this situation? And it's like, all right, like, you know, let's be there first to like validate your feelings and validate your frustrations right now. Second, let's go through these actual options that you actually can do and like see if they work. If they don't, let's go to the next one. If this doesn't, go to the next one. And we just try to see different solutions that we can like kind of provide. And it's hard. That like I cannot stress that enough, because when I see these like overwhelmingly like big news thrown into my face, half of me is kind of, I just don't want to do anything anymore. And then the other part of me is like, oh, I know I'm gonna have to like reach out to my representative, and I know it's gonna be some stupid reply email that's gonna be like, thank you for reaching out. We care about your, you know, racial identity and what happens to you as a community and da 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 da. And like I've heard it 1,000 times from many state representatives, and I think it's just kind of like, am I ever gonna see the results of this? Probably not in my lifetime, to be honest. Like it's gonna take consistent work to get there. Like you can't go working out for a day and just be like, oh, now I'm gonna get swole. It's like, no, you gotta work out every single day. You gotta make sure the pain is there. You gotta keep going with it. And I think unfortunately that's how we're continuing us when it comes to providing a world in the future where we get equality as humans, you know? And that's the hard part. It's like, what do we do when we get to this kind of burnout point of like, I don't want to do this anymore? You know, like check with your friends, support them, check with your non-POC friends, have them support you. If they're not supporting you, get some new friends. If you are alone, hit us up. We'll support you, you know, and it's just like, it's hard to have that kind of conversation when it comes to like, oh, like support is all you need, rainbows and sunshine, but it helps. It literally helps get you to the end of the day, you know? And yeah, that's my takeaway. And yes, the internet stinks sometimes. I will agree.
Yeah, technical difficulties on this end.
Glad we got you back though.
There you go.
Definitely. You know what, Ray? I think you make really excellent points, and the awesome thing is that it's in our blood. Our ancestors, our people before us, generations before us, they have been doing this work. They have been doing this in much greater levels than I could have ever done. But it's in our blood. This resiliency, it's within us. We never gave up. They never gave up, and that's why we're here, and that's why we have to continue the fight. And that's the awesome thing as to, yes, it's exhausting, but we know there's a silver lining, and we know that even if the work, we don't see it within our lifetimes, like you said, it's going to go ahead and impact the future, our future, the future kiddos that are coming up into the university and stuff. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Wow.
Like warm and fuzzy, but
I know, like that hit.
For me, college has been an interesting experience. It's been very cathartic for me. And when I see all these things happening, there's half of me that gets like angry again, even more angry, re-traumatized, like after seeing the accumulation of all these things and the knowledge that I have been presented with, like through my own studies and through the ethnic studies based classes that I've been taking, and just the discussions I've been a part of and the resources I've been turned on to. Like there's it's become so ingrained in my mind. Like, I can't wake up and not think about it. I can't wake up and be like, oh, I'm gonna turn off that little equity switch today. We're just gonna live as a human being. I'm like, well, no, that doesn't happen. And I find myself getting very frustrated a lot when I see things happening. Exactly. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, no. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I think that perfectly describes how I feel. And I'm one of those people where it's like, I want everyone else to know this too, because American citizens are chronically undereducated. Chronically. It is ridiculous. The amount of stuff they omit from history that they don't want you to know. Yes, Sian, dense AF. Sian's blowing up the chat right now. Yes, dense AF. Like, y'all, we are so unaware of our own damn history. Of our own history. So that's why I organize the programming that I do. That's why I take the classes that I take. And that's why I want to make sure that other people are aware of this too.
Yeah.
Because
Shout out ethnic studies.
yeah, shout out ethnic studies. And poli-sci's pretty good too. Poli-sci's getting in there. Yeah. But I just want to make sure that people know. That's one of the first steps, is having knowledge of the problem. And then how do we address it? Then how do we formulate our solutions to it?
We have to understand that knowledge is action. We cannot keep knowledge to ourselves. We have to act on that knowledge. Because what good is it if we know all these things and we don't act on it?
Yeah.
There you go.
Period.
Well, alrighty. Suyan, you've been an amazing guest. We hope that you can come back V soon.
Of course, I'll bring in the fluffy clouds and rainbows anytime.
Please, thank you. I hope everyone who's listening uses this time to kind of do some self-care. And I don't mean just taking a nap and then waking up at 7 p.m. and being like, oh, I guess I really needed that nap. We're talking about real self-care, get yourself refreshed, get yourself ready. Because next week is spring break. Yes, hydrate yourself. Do what you need to do to enjoy the time off from school. But make sure that you get ready for whatever the week after brings, which is our next topic for next week: what our spring break is, and what did we do, and how did we do it. So I hope to see you all, not next week, but the week after, on another episode of
What are you?